Crossover Thursday at the Locked On Bucs podcast. Patricia Traina of the Locked On Giants podcast here to help us preview this weekend's Monday Night Football contest between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Giants for Week 11 of the 2021 NFL season.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation? Welcome to today's episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. I am your host, David Harris, and my co-host, James Yarko, off for today's episode. But you can find him on Twitter anyway at JYarko_Bucs. I am at DHarrison82, and the show is at Locked On Bucs. Thank you for making this show your first view or your first listen every single day. We are free. We are available on all platforms and on YouTube, wherever you're at. Please click subscribe or follow, leave a rating, leave a review, leave your thoughts and comments on the YouTube videos. Thank you, as always, for joining us at the Locked On Bucs podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, and for your first listen of the day, we're going to bring in Patricia Traina of the Locked On New York Giants podcast to help us preview the Week 11 Monday Night Football contest between your Buccaneers and the New York Giants. It's always a tough matchup, Patricia, whenever the Giants play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I mean, nightmares and PTSD of Matt Gay missing a game-winning field goal, and it doesn't get much better after that. I mean, I guess statistically and in the win-loss column it gets better, but really always a tough matchup, and the Buccaneers are coming in looking vulnerable to tough matchups. But overall, Patricia, first of all, how are you? Thank you for joining me, of course, as we do this every week. What are your overall thoughts with the New York Giants as they currently sit at 3-6, but coming off of a win against the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, the Giants have won 2 of their last 3 games before the bye week. The bad news is, though, coming out of the bye, they tended to start off a little slowly. Now, Tampa Bay is a team, with all due respect, they are the defending Super Bowl champions, but they're a team that the Giants have played competitively the last couple of times that they've met. Even beating Tampa Bay, I think it was Daniel Jones's rookie year. That was the game, his starting debut. And he had a player of the week performance that week. So, and then last year at MetLife Stadium, as you know, the Bucs just barely held on to a win. I think it came down to a broken up 2-point conversion attempt by the Giants that the Bucs broke up. So it's always been competitive. Right. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, I'd like to say it's the Tom Brady effect, but Tom Brady, he's only been in the last 2 meetings with the Giants, including this one coming up here. So, but yeah, they play each other competitively. I'm not sure why the games are so close all the time, but hey, it makes for interesting football. And I think this Monday night is going to be just as interesting.
It definitely makes for interesting football. Absolutely. But I think Buccaneers fans, given the current state of what's going on in Tampa, can't be very comfortable seeing the Giants come in. They're going to expect a Buccaneers win, a rebound, but we'll see what happens. But you mentioned Daniel Jones, and I kind of want to start there because we talked earlier in the season, obviously, me covering the Washington football team and the 2 NFC East division rivals squaring off. Washington came out successful in that game, but we talked about it. This is the year. This is the prove it season for Daniel Jones. You're either going to show that you are the guy that can lead the Giants into their next era of trying to be one of the best franchises in the NFL, or you're going to show us that we need to move on. Through 9 games, 3-6, so the record isn't all that great. 2,000, almost 2,100 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. What have you seen from this Daniel Jones? And ball security, I think, is the biggest question. How do you feel about him there? And how confident are you in him coming up against this Buccaneers defense that honestly over the last couple of weeks has looked fairly susceptible to even not the best quarterbacks in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, with Daniel Jones, if you're asking me, do I feel that he's definitely the guy, that he has proven that he is the guy moving forward? My answer is no, not yet. Part of it is, and I hate to use this as an excuse, but I think you have to in this case, the injuries that have hit that offense. I mean, we still haven't really gotten a good look at what this offense could be with all the playmakers. Now, people listening to this who are Giant fans are going to say, well, Jason Garrett. Okay, I agree with you. A good coaching staff figures out how to compensate for injuries. Right. In some cases, though, I question about the depth. Like, for example, on the offensive line, for the beginning part of the season, the Giants were having a different offensive line combination every week. So obviously the depth there was a question mark. So putting that all together and how that affects Daniel Jones, he's had to work with a different supporting cast, and you just haven't had that opportunity to build up the chemistry. Yeah. Now, there's also been instances where Daniel has been tasked with basically loading the team on his shoulders and carrying them over the finish line, and he's fell short a couple of times. There's been others where he's, valiantly at least made the effort. So it's been up and down and inconsistent with him. He is more comfortable in this offense, but, I question how comfortable he is behind the current offensive line. Andrew Thomas, their starting left tackle, has been on injured reserve the last 3 weeks. I don't know if he's going to be ready for Monday night against the Bucs. Right now, as we record this, and we're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, if I had to take a guess, I would say probably not. Mm-hmm. But you just kind of see that Daniel Jones isn't, as comfortable behind the current configuration as he was when Andrew Thomas, their best offensive lineman, by the way, was in there. So the jury's still kind of out with him. And from week to week, it just seems like you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of like a box of chocolates without a guide, so you don't know what you're going to get. But hopefully they have a good plan. The running game has been working for them. They've been using more heavy personnel to beat up, the defense. And hopefully they can make that their bread and butter.
Yeah, and, Saquon Barkley potentially coming back in this game. I know I read some stuff that said that he probably would have played against the Raiders if it wasn't for a false positive COVID test that kept him out of a couple of practices, and then, of course, missing about a month before that. Just not a good situation to bring him back in, which I agree with from a personnel management standpoint. And obviously the Giants got the win, so they're happy with that decision. Devontae Booker leading the team in rushing a little over midway through the season, which I think is what everybody predicted, right? And everybody predicted Devontae Booker would lead the Giants in rushing. Not at all. I was a huge fan of him coming out of Utah, to be honest with you. Ball security was always an issue with him, and it kind of reared its ugly head when he was with the Denver Broncos. How has he been with the New York Giants, and how has he been this season, in your opinion? Is Saquon going to come back? Would you be willing to put out there again on a Tuesday afternoon that Saquon will be back? And if he's not, again, how confident are you in Devontae and even Elijah Penny and their ability to take advantage of a Buccaneers run defense that will probably be missing Vita Vea up front?
Yeah, I feel good about Saquon being back. Now, the question is if he does come back, is he going to get a full workload? My guess is he won't. All right. Because he hasn't played in 4 weeks. And by the way, I didn't think he was going to be back against the Raiders, even if he hadn't had the false positives. There was a report on the Monday night game against the Chiefs that he was still experiencing some swelling. So I knew right then and there that even if they hadn't gone through that whole knuckle drill with the false positives, that he wouldn't be back. But anyway, the running game is interesting. Devontae Booker and Eli Penny, the fullback who doubles up as a tailback. Mm-hmm. The thing that I like about the two of them is they put their foot in the ground and they go. There's no dancing. There's no hesitation. The hole is there, spotted, boom, through the line. Saquon, sometimes you see him dance a little bit behind the line because he's looking for that big hole that he can exploit for that home run, if you will. Yeah. Where Saquon, I think, has the edge over those other two guys is that get him outside and into space and watch him go. Yeah. But Booker and Eli Penny had benefited, I think, from the Giants using more heavy personnel on offense. They've been using a lot more 12 and 13 personnel. A couple times last week, we saw 23. We saw 22. So they have been using, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's actually something I'm going to be looking up to do a story on. Mm-hmm. But they've been using more heavy personnel, and that kind of fits into, I think, the strengths of what they have. Now, when Barkley comes back again, that doesn't mean that he can't benefit from that. But the question is how healthy is he going to be, and is he going to be able to carry a full workload? I don't think he will be the first week back, because remember, then the Giants got to turn around, and then they got a game against the Eagles, a division game. They're probably going to want him more along the lines of a full workload by then, because it is a division game. But yeah, I think there's definitely room for all three of those guys to get their share of touches. Now, Penny's touches will probably drop. Mm-hmm. I think he's had something like 60 touches since Saquon has been out, which is a lot for a fullback, by the way. But, there's still a role for him because, you put the ball in his hands, and for the most part, that kid does some great stuff there. And Booker has been just an absolute nice find for the Giants. I know a lot of people were down on that signing because of the contract he got, but he's shown why I think he earned that contract, and he's been delivering.
More coming on this crossover Thursday episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Bucs fans, I'm David Harrison, your host for this episode, and I'm going to tell you about an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called the GetUpside app, and our listeners are making up to 25 cents per gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free GetUpside app in the App Store or on Google Play. Use a promo code TOUCHDOWN, and when you use that promo code, you'll get up to 50 cents per gallon back on your first fill up with the GetUpside app. Some of our listeners and viewers are making up to $200 to $300 a month in cash back. Again, that promo code is TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon back on your first fill up using the GetUpside app. You can cash out anytime, whether it's to your bank account, PayPal, or in e-gift cards to brands like Amazon and others. Just download the GetUpside app, use that promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 50 cents per gallon back on your first fill up using the GetUpside app. Segment 2 here at the Locked On Bucs podcast. Let's get back to the crossover conversation between myself and the host of the Locked On Giants podcast, Patricia Traina.
Yeah, I mean, just as a fan of the player, again, like I said, I've been very happy to see what he's been able to do. And then you look at another investment that seems to be turning out pretty well for them. Kadarius Toney, rookie wide receiver. Last time we talked, 2 games into his NFL career, 2 catches, and he had like 2 yards or something crazy. Not a good start, but now he leads the New York Giants football team in receiving yards at 352, which, again, with Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, stuff like guys like that, it's a little bit interesting, but a lot of that has also been due to some injuries as well. But what have you liked from your first round draft pick? What do you think about this receiving core, and who should we expect to see on the field going up against what is still a very banged up Buccaneers secondary?
Yeah, as far as the receiving core goes, I don't think we'll see Sterling Shepard, who has basically been in the slot for the Giants a lot, but Kadarius Toney can play the slot. Matter of fact, he is the future in the slot. I love Sterling Shepard, but with his contract, I just don't see him being here after this year, especially given all the time he's missed the last few seasons due to injury. Right. I think you'll see Golladay, a healthy Golladay. Darius Slayton will be out there, I'm sure. So they'll have some options. But as far as, what I've seen from Kadarius Toney, this kid is electric. He's explosive. And my gosh, you could do so much with him. I mean, he almost reminds me a little bit of Odell when Odell was here. Yeah. The Giants were having him throw passes.
I saw that. Yeah.
They were running jet sweeps, trick plays and all that stuff. And Kadarius Toney, I think, at this point, I would say maybe a tad better than what Odell was, early on. Not too much, I'm not trying to take away from Odell and the great player he was when he was here, but Kadarius Toney, I see a lot of those traits in his game that Odell had. But the difference being is I think Kadarius Toney is a little bit more disciplined in his route running. And just, when you put the ball in that kid's hands, you pretty much know good things are going to happen. And here's the other thing I love about his game. He's smart. And I'll cite one specific play. There was I think it was against the Raiders. Yeah, it was against the Raiders. It was a pass attempt. It was a trick play. Mm-hmm. And he was going to chuck the ball. And now Kadarius Toney, remember, used to be a quarterback in high school. So he has a little experience playing the position. And he realized that the primary receivers were covered. And he just basically took the ball and ate it. So, most guys would say, oh my God, I got to throw the ball regardless and we'll see what happens. And they'll put it up for grabs, but he was smart. He made a smart decision. So you add that to his game and you just have yourself a really, solid player who's really fit in nicely with that offense.
Yeah, I remember seeing that play, Patricia, and I literally said out loud, I know quarterbacks that wouldn't have eaten that sack, let alone a rookie wide receiver, like the most diva stereotype position in the NFL, getting a chance to throw the ball, and he wisely eats the sack. So yeah, definitely a huge football IQ play from the young guy there. Flipping over to the defensive side of things, Leonard Williams and Azeez Ojulari lead the team. Both have 5.5 sacks so far in the season. Sexy Dexy, as you guys like to call him, Dexter Lawrence has a 1.5 sacks himself. Still, a force there in the middle for that team. How do you feel about this team? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line has probably been the most healthy, part of the team, which is good because it's kept Tom Brady healthy. 9 games not allowing a sack since they came together in 2020, including last week against the Washington football team. Obviously, still didn't lead to a win, but it's a good stat to be aware of. How do you feel about this defense getting after Tom Brady? And do you think they have to get to Tom Brady, not just after him, in order to contain some of these weapons, even when you consider that Antonio Brown probably not playing in this game.
Well, I could see that you've been traumatized by the Sexy Dexy nickname.
I love
right?
it. I love Dexter Lawrence. And the first time I heard you say it, I was like, that's awesome. I love it.
And hey, he's got a new clothing line, I think, called the Sex. I think he uses that nickname too in his clothing line. I forget what it's called, but he refers to himself as Sexy Dexy. So that's what he wants to call himself. Hey, who am I to argue, right?
There you go.
Tom Brady, I mean, the Giants have made a living basically harassing him. I mean, we saw it in both Super Bowls, how they turned Superman into the average mortal man. And that's the same with any quarterback. It's not just Tom Brady. Any quarterback, if you harass him and you put the pressure on him and you throw off his internal clock, he's not going to function very well. I don't care how many years of experience he has, how many Super Bowls he's been to, how many Pro Bowls he's been to. He's not going to function. So the Giants, what they've been trying to do is they've been trying to get home with 4, no more than 5, because obviously they've got to respect the pass and whatnot. And what's interesting is they added, or they've kind of changed up a little bit, their edge rushers. The starting duo of Lorenzo Carter and O'Shane Ximines have been very, very quiet. So last week against the Raiders, they brought up Trent Harris from the practice squad. They gave Quincy Roche, who was one of my draft crushes, some extra playing snaps. And they got after the quarterback. They got after Derek Carr. They were moving Derek Carr off his spot. And I think if they can do that, by just closing in and just, collapsing that pocket so that it feels like it's being squeezed, I could see Tom Brady, feeling that heat and maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to have a lot of errant throws, but let's just say it would benefit the Giants if they can penetrate and get through to Tom Brady. Now, one thing the Giants haven't done a whole lot of, which is kind of surprising, and I'm really not sure why they haven't done it. We haven't seen a whole lot of, double A gap blitzes from them, which to me is kind of surprising. They did some of that last year. Yeah. I'd like to see if maybe, when they did their self-scouting this past week, the bye week, if maybe that becomes a little bit more of the game plan. Now, obviously, you can't blitz on every down, but right. Just to throw one in there every once in a while to keep that offensive line honest, why not?
Yeah. One more segment to go here on Crossover Thursday. David Harrison and Patricia Traina previewing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus New York Giants on Monday Night Football in Week 11 of the 2021 NFL season, and we're doing it thanks to our friends over at BetOnline.AG with a whole new updated interface on their desktop or mobile site just in time for the start of the basketball season. There's more props, odds, and lines than ever before, and BetOnline remains your number one spot for basketball and football action this season. Head over to the website today, sign up, and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Whether it's basketball, football, hockey, boxing, UFC, or your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Again, that promo code locked on for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 3 of this Crossover Thursday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. David Harrison joined once again by Patricia Traina of the Locked On Giants podcast.
Yeah, especially against quarterback that isn't, known for getting out of the pocket. I mean, that's everybody knows the best way to pressure Brady is right up the middle and right in his face. Bring his gaze from the horizon line down inside the pocket a little bit and give yourself a fighting chance. And that's what teams have been trying to do. Some internal pressure from the Washington football team. Only got one hit on Tom Brady, but it was a big one from Jonathan Allen early on in the game. And really from that point on, you saw Brady get rid of the ball with the quickness all day long. And that's what really helped that Washington defense kind of contain that attack and that offense. Tom Brady, 3 interceptions through his first 7 games of the season, 4 in his last 2. And you look at the New York Giants defense, and I know Xavier McKinney got 2 of those off of Derek Carr. So that 4 looks a little bit higher than maybe it really is when you consider that one game outburst. But then James Bradbury's got plenty of experience against guys like Mike Evans in this Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster. How do you feel if Tom Brady is getting the ball out? How do you feel about your secondary and your linebackers' ability and safety ability to cover Rob Gronkowski if he does return this weekend?
The linebackers I'm still a little shaky on because I don't feel that they have a solid cover guy amongst them. I mean, the closest they have is Tate Crowder, and Tate Crowder has limitations too. But otherwise, Reggie Ragland is more of a downhill thumper. I just I wish they had Blake Martinez, because I think I would feel a lot better if Blake was in the lineup. But of course, he's done for the year with an ACL. I do like the play of the safeties. Xavier McKinney, as you said, he's been coming on, playing lights out. So there's obviously some hope there for the Giants. But the middle of the field has been a problem for the Giants, and they've clamped down recently on the tight ends, because early on the tight ends were just absolutely destroying them in the middle of the field. And part of that was also because the Giants were playing loose zones, and the communication wasn't as solid as it should have been. That has been improved the last couple of games. And, I came up with, this is actually a cornerback stat, but Adoree Jackson, who got off to a slow start, has only allowed in his last 4 games 36 yards in coverage, which is pretty impressive. So they've kind of simplified it or streamlined it, whatever word you want to use. And now they're playing off of each other a lot better. And I'm just curious to see how Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, deploys everybody. Are they going to put, for example, Adoree Jackson on Mike Evans? Because James Bradbury, great guy, but he struggled with speed this year. I think that's always been a kind of a problem for him, but this year in particular, it's been a bigger problem. So I'm curious to see how Patrick Graham mixes it up, especially since they just played each other last year, and new personnel, a little, slightly new personnel, but you don't want to have the same matchup. I would think, but we'll see how he does it.
Yeah, and then Patricia, the Buccaneers' worst areas of their game, they're 27th currently in rush offense, averaging 90.9 yards per game. They're 22nd in the league in pass defense, allowing 254.2 yards per game. If you have to pick one of those categories, the Giants either continuing to stop the Buccaneers running game or being able to exploit the weakness in the pass defense, which one of those is the most important avenue for the Giants to exploit on Monday night?
I would say probably the run, because the run just sets everything up for you. So I would go with that for sure.
Yeah, and then the Buccaneers are scoring an average of 31 points. The Giants are scoring an average of less than 19.9 points. So that's quite an average scoring margin difference. Let's say that's the line. Let's say the line is 31 to 20, and it's 11 point favorites for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you think the Giants will pull off the upset? Do you think they can cover an 11-point spread if that's what the line is at, or how do you see this thing going?
Well, if I had to put money down right now, I don't think I would bet the spread. I think I would say the Giants are going to cover. I would. Okay. I don't think the Bucs will win by 11.5 points. Do I think the Bucs will win? I could see that, but not by 11. I'd be surprised. I mean, that said, the Giants have historically been slow coming out of the bye week. They're like 27th in games played after the bye in terms of winning percentage. And, it's like when you go on vacation, you go away and you kind of unplug and you unwind, and now you get back to work and it's like, it takes you a day or two to get kind of back up to speed, so to speak. Yeah. So I'm curious to see. The Giants did have a practice on Monday. It was a light practice. They're going to have a light practice on Wednesday. For those who haven't figured it out, we're recording this on Tuesday. So just let me throw that in there for timing purposes. So they'll have a light practice on Wednesday. They'll get into the heavy stuff Thursday and Friday. And then Saturday will be kind of like a wrap-up type deal. And then I believe they have a walkthrough schedule for Sunday before they head on down to Tampa Bay. So I'm curious to see how that ramp up process goes in terms of, getting guys back into the groove, if you will.
Absolutely. And the last time the Buccaneers had a 2-game losing streak, it was last season. Again, losing to the Rams and the Chiefs and that version of a 2-game losing streak. Had another NFC home game, a game against an NFC opponent, home game, won by 8 points. The Giants have played this team very, very closely. I don't expect an 11-point margin of victory for the Buccaneers either, even though I will probably be picking the Buccaneers to win. But like I said, on our other part of our conversation, probably looking more like a 3 to 5 point spread until the Buccaneers can show they were the Buccaneers we saw earlier in this season. Patricia, Traina, greatly appreciate you. And all the listeners and viewers out there, yeah, we're going to have plenty more coming this week. One more episode at least from each of us before this game. Actually, 2 more episodes rather from each of us really drop before this game kicks off to complete Week 11 of the 2021 NFL season. Locked on Bucs, Locked on Giants. Patricia, Traina, David Harrison. Appreciate you, Pat. Good luck this weekend and with the rest of your season.
Thank you.
All right, guys, big shout out to Patricia Traina, the host of the Locked On Giants podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed listening or watching that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it with Pat. Always a good time talking to her when these two teams match up. Now that you're done with your first listen or first view of the day, might we recommend Locked On Bets as your second, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, and expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. James Yarko and I will be back tomorrow with our final episode of the week. We've got one more after that, previewing the Monday Night Football action, but we will get to some more voicemails. We'll get to some more of the hot topics surrounding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and some injury updates, hopefully on some very important players as the Buccaneers look to snap this 2-game losing streak. So we'll be back. In the meantime, find everything that James and I are writing about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers over at BucsNation.com, on Twitter at Bucs_Nation, the show on Twitter at Locked On Bucs. I am at DHarrison82. James is at JYarko_Bucs. Until we meet again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thank you for joining me right here at Locked On Bucs.